Your haircut looks great. Doesn't the haircut look great, folks? Omer's looking fantastic here. Hey, welcome to AI and the Technical Program Manager. How you doing, Omer? How you doing, sir?
Hey, David. Good to have you here. Thanks for
All
having me.
right. So, you are the CEO of the Technical Program Manager Institute. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Excellent. Excellent. So, you should have a pretty good perspective on what a technical program manager does, right?
I would like to say that. Yeah,
All right.
absolutely.
So,
So,
so give it to us. Tell us before we get into the whole AI thing. Tell us, what do technical program managers do?
so it's really interesting, right, David? Like we've seen this industry shift over the last several decades, right? We've seen the shift from traditional project executioners to official project managers, from project managers the shift into certified scrum masters, from scrum masters into larger organizations relying on a combination of scrum masters and IT project managers, agile project managers, release train engineers, and what we've seen in the last 4 to 5 years is this transition more towards the role of a TPM, a technical program manager. It really started with the large tech organizations that I've been involved with, myself as well. We've seen this happen at Microsoft, Google, Amazon, Meta, Apple, right? So you have all these large tech organizations. And what they're really looking for in this role of a technical program manager is different in each of these organizations,
Okay.
right? But there are a ton of similarities, right? Like, and as we go through what the institute is all about, is trying to standardize like what that role really needs to entail, and what we've built out, and what we keep, having conversations with large leaders in both tech and non-tech organizations is around how the role of a technical program manager is facilitating this new concept of this mindset shift, which we are calling the program to business mindset. So a
Program
lot
to
of,
business mindset. Okay.
and what we've all seen is you've all gone through the traditional project to product shift for a lot of organizations. And
Yep.
what this is now driving is from a delivery perspective of initiatives, you're no longer looking at the work items in the form of a project or a product or a program, but you're really looking at this as a business. And that's where the TPM role is extremely powerful. This role is responsible for everything that entails in that entrepreneurial venture, for that matter. Right. So the best example that I always give folks is around, think about Netflix. Netflix
Hmm.
decides, hey, we want to go out and have ads as part of our experience for the customers. Right. And when you look through what Netflix has been able to do with this, programs like this are not being run by traditional scrum masters and agile coaches.
Hmm.
Those skill sets are helpful, complementary, but the role itself is that of now a technical program manager who's evaluating the decisions across a various number of levers to try and assess not just the technical capabilities of how this needs to work, what architecture needs to be there, what event driven solutions need to be there, but also, hey, how do I monetize this? At what
Yep.
point is there a return on ad spend? How, at
Hmm.
what point is it, and what's the ultimate outcomes that we're looking for? Are we looking for people to sign up for the cheaper with ads model? Or
Yep.
are we looking for people to subscribe with the less ads or no ads at the premium tier? Which one
And
is
they're
a
also
better fit for
probably
them?
talking about the capabilities that are available, right? So you
Absolutely.
got to make trade-offs as to what, maybe the executive wants based on what the technology capabilities are, and the traditional scrum master isn't going to understand that. That's for sure.
Exactly. And
So
it's
you got
funny
to
you
talk.
mentioned that,
Go
right?
ahead.
So, no,
All right.
exactly, right. So
So
this,
you got
this is
elements of business value creation. You have elements of product management. You certainly have elements of traditional program management, and overlaying all that is the deep understanding of, software, database, tools, technologies, capabilities.
Absolutely. It's funny
Yeah.
because you mentioned all these different elements, David, because and this just happened to me like last week. We were working with a legal firm and the IT department over there. We sit down with a project manager who tells us, hey, we're building this agentic solution for our internal team. And we'll talk more about that in a little bit. But the question was asked like, hey, so what feature sets are we working on? Like how are we prioritizing? And the answer was, well, I'm waiting for the business to tell me what we need to take on in the next sprint.
Hmm.
As a TPM, that's not no longer a valuable or a valid answer. Like
Hmm.
you need to have a seat at the table. You are the owner of that entrepreneurial venture. You have partners with you in the form of your business stakeholders and your product managers and your product owners who you're sitting and having honest, intelligent conversations around, as opposed to just being the task taker. Hey, business has asked me to prioritize features X, Y, and Z, and that's what we're going to go
Yep.
and build.
Yeah,
So
it's interesting, the business acumen piece. I mean, and that's why it's a kind of a unicornish position right now, and why it drives a lot of salary. But certainly, it's not something that it's something that can be trained and built, and certainly that's what the institute's all about. But then
absolutely.
you're building this institute up; it's rocking and rolling. You got over 1,000 people certified right now, which is great and growing rapidly. But then this AI thing comes in
Yep.
fast and furious, and you're already throwing out some AI terminology, which is great. The agentic stuff and other stuff like that. But what's going on? How does the role change with this AI thing now coming to bear and starting to rear its
So,
monster head,
so
especially the Gen AI? AI has always been around here, but the Gen AI stuff, the RAG stuff, that type of thing.
Oh, absolutely. And so there's a few different ways this role now enhances or progresses faster, right? As soon as we have most large organizations, both tech and non-tech, with the element of Gen AI capabilities available, the first immediate ask from stakeholders is, the traditional paradigm was a stakeholder wants more for less. But now with the advent of AI, there's a third lever, which is we want more for less, and we want it much faster
Yep.
because you should be able to leverage AI, right? Which is
And it's
reasonable.
interesting you say that, because in the agile world, and agile is to say it's not about speed. I'm doing this because you're going to get to need better, right? So
That's right.
traditional and agile will finish at the same time with a completely finished project, but
Yeah,
you'll be closer to need. But now with AI, they're saying I should get speed as well now.
that's right.
Now you
That's right.
can give me speed.
That's it, right? I mean, think about what would it take a general, set of team members to be able to come up with wireframes for a mobile application. It
Hmm.
would take weeks of discovery, months of prototyping before a set of wireframes could be generated. We just sat down a couple of weeks back with a healthcare client, and we sat down and they're like, hey, we're envisioning this, and we use this as our existing platform. Let's go about a whiteboarding session. And we sat down on Figma, and boom, after 2 hours, there's the first set of mockups right there.
Yep.
So there is an innate expectation from TPMs in AI initiatives, twofolds. One is how can they help leverage AI to generate results faster? Right? That's the first element of things. And then the second element is how do TPMs upskill themselves and bridge the gap between data science, engineering, and business to run AI initiatives more
Oh, and
successfully?
the tooling side of it is going to be crazy, right? I mean, you
Massive.
mentioned Figma. I mean, we could spend the rest of the time just talking about all the different tools and never even touch 50% of them. All
Absolutely.
right. All right. So it's cool. We got that's a speed, 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 right? So that's a big element now. And
Huge.
maybe actually producing speed. The other piece I kind of sniff around that is the productivity word and the cost savings word. And the one thing we're seeing is very large institutional companies laying people off with the hopes that the same work, if not more work, is going to be done with the idea of using agentics and AI as well. With that said, and I think you got a really good position here to talk about this, and it's worth people hearing it, is there's a lot of confusion about the different type of AI initiatives. There's certainly a ton of confusion, and certainly agentics adds to that confusion. But kind of just walk us through the differences between, hey, a traditional ML project, a generative AI, co-intelligence project, a generative AI agentics project, and maybe more of a RAG-based AI scenario, and even what's a internal large language model scenario. Kind of
Yeah.
give us your thoughts there.
No, it's great, right? And it's funny you mention all of these, right? Because what you will realize is most large tech organizations are exactly in this journey right now. And it's a combination of a couple of different things. There are organizations, think the open AIs of the world, the metas of the world, that are responsible for building new LLMs as products,
Yep.
which the other companies are invested on utilizing
Yep.
to gain efficiencies, productivity, cost benefit, whatever you want to call that, right?
Yep.
But
The
then
product
there is
vendors, the LLM product vendors.
That's right.
Yep.
Right. Then you have these other organizations. Think about your large banks, your insurance companies, your utility providers, your energy companies. They're more vested on, hey, what kind of tools, what kind of existing off the shelf LLMs are available for us to be able to gain those same benefits that we want to be able to achieve, the
Software,
productivity
give me
benefits.
a software as a service where I can do
That's
this,
right.
buy it
That's
just in
right.
time. But now the big, ugly, scary security issue comes to play. The big, ugly, scary bias and detail of information. So great. So you got both sides. You got the vendors, they need skills, and you got the big boy companies, big girl companies, big person companies, and they need it. So what are they looking for?
That's it, right? It's a marketplace at this point. You have vendors, you have a customer, and you have a demand. So you have the vendors, you have the customers, right? So when you look at all these different types of projects that exist, and I love the fact that you brought up traditional ML for some of those, like traditional
Because
machine
it's
learning.
AI. It's been here. That's what you
Exactly,
did in Facebook. It's there, and
exactly,
Marketo. It's
right?
there, and
That's
Instagram.
it.
It's there. It's been
That's
happening
it.
for years.
That's right. This is not net new, right? I mean, I can at least from my short 10 plus years of experience tell you, like in the 2010s, we were using traditional machine learning to make all kinds of classifications, predictive models. The intention over there is you have some sort of tabular data and you're trying to drive some predictive modeling. You can, figure out churn for different customers. You can forecast your different demands. You can do fraud detection, but that's all mostly machine learning, where you can, if I'm a bank, I can make a prediction on if or not or when a customer might default on a loan. If
Yeah,
I'm a energy supplier, I might look at it and say, will this person not pay back their outstanding balance, right? Anything like that, that's more machine learning. Then you start getting into this idea of generative AI,
yep,
right? Which, and I've had the chance of sitting down with some really high level executives in these LLM organizations, the vendor element of things, including Microsoft, including OpenAI. And a lot of what we're seeing in the industry for the last 2 years is this is revolutionary. And I think I agree, right? This is almost akin to when we first got internet. In many ways, I think there is more potential in this because of the capabilities and how the average Joe on the street has transformed in the way they're interacting with this, right? So when we start
mhm,
talking generative AI, you're looking at existing LLMs, existing models, large language models, whether it's a GPT or a DALI. You have the ability for it to be able to ask a certain context and question with a prompt and generate some new outcome. The
yep.
easiest way, and most of us are experiencing this.
That's
I'm
what
about to,
I've been in the call. Probably 90% of the people listening here have
right?
experienced that. But what now the
Yeah,
confusion starts when you start talking about agentics and RAG based, and then
yeah.
maybe
So
your own LLM running on your computer.
precisely. Now you go in from Gen AI, which is to generate new content from an existing LLM. Now I want to create something called RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation. Now this is really interesting. Last year at AWS Summit in New York City, we saw this as like a breakthrough of this concept of RAG, where the intention was you're no longer just working off of an LLM, but you now have the ability to feed relevant internal or external documentation. So it has a lot more context around your organization. So think about this in the form of if I'm a user for a law firm and I'm just interested in generation of policy answers or creation of job requirements or a new subpoena or any other legal document, I'm able to use the existing documentation from my company and then create a more retrieval augmented generation. So it's not just generating data or outcomes or outputs based on the underlying LLM, but it's also learning from the new set of data that we are providing.
Yeah.
This is an
And then
interesting one.
things like Claude has Project that does a great job of this, and
Absolutely.
OpenAI calls it the GPT, and I
GPT.
think
Yep,
Gemini just rolled out their version of this,
that's right.
right? So I
That's right.
kind of call it a public-private hybrid, right?
Absolutely.
You buy the public enterprise division, version, but you get the GTP RAG enablement.
Absolutely. And now, see, here's the interesting piece about being a technical program manager. As a technical program manager, you start running into this new challenge of how to orchestrate the pipelines between the different vector databases that are available in the LLM versus the embeddings and the retrieval logic that we are building,
Hmm.
right? So that's where the role of a TPM in AI initiatives is very different than running your traditional IT projects, right? And
Yep.
now to take it to the last level, which is the most recent one in today's day and age, is agentics AI, right? Like we're
Yep.
hearing this is the next frontier in everything because it not just generate contents, but it has the ability to take autonomous actions. And this is very important and very interesting. The easiest example of this is I've been looking for a flight to go take a trip to Paris. Now I have the ability to go out and say to an agent, book
Hmm.
me the cheapest flight to Paris from New York City. And by the way, send me a calendar invite so my calendar is blocked.
Yep.
Right? This now has the ability to take a series of actions. It is able to go about searching the web, it is able to compare, based on those comparisons, make an actual decision, and then take an action independently.
Yeah.
This is where agentic AI is really being triggering a lot of context in organizations where they're not just looking at this in the form of the day-to-day average Joe personal usage, but now for, I mean, we're working on an AI agent right now that triages support tickets.
Yeah.
So we have external customers, B2B client
You
base.
did a good job of explaining agentics and the fact that it's taken multiple steps, right?
Mhm,
That's really, really interesting. And the real debate here that TPMs will be involved with, for me, for sure,
mhm.
is the idea of co-intelligence based systems where it's you're using it to make a worker more productive, or complete automation based systems where you're eradicating certain work
Yeah,
areas.
that's it. Right.
Yeah.
And now, go ahead.
Right. No, you first.
Here's the exact skinny in this, Dave. And I know you and have, contemplated about it, whiteboarded on it, right? Because there's two ways that organizations are seeing this. If you have the ability to automate some of these low-hanging fruits, I mean, we've been doing this without the advent of agentic AIs to the highest possible ability. Think about what was the most common reason people called help desk in an organization. What was the
Yeah.
number one reason people call help desk in an
Like,
office?
they can't turn on their computer. They can't
That's
turn
it.
on their device.
That's it. I can't get into my device. That's it. Right? That was the number one thing. And at the time, we decided, hey, how do I reduce the call volumes for my help desk team, my incident response team? Hey, let me give them a document. Let me give them, hey, self-service. Get
Yeah.
self-service. Did that mean that we lost all our help desk? No.
No.
It just meant that we had the cycles to focus on something that's more powerful and go
Yeah.
build the next big thing. And
That's a
this is,
possibility, but I mean, it's interesting. We could do the rest of the session on that debate,
yeah,
and because there's so many nuances there. But the big thing I think you did such a great job of was putting those into the boxes, right? So
yeah,
they understand what ML is, what generative AI is, what RAG based AI is, what agentics is, and I think that was fantastic. And that for a TPM, they're going to have to keep understanding that and growing in their knowledge, because it might be just an ML based situation they have to jump into. It might just be hey, let's bring in this Gen AI open large language model. It might be, hey, we have to use Llama and create our own large language model. It may
large
be,
language
hey, let's
models.
do a public private hybrid enterprise open AI environment, right?
That's right. That's right.
It's crazy. It's really, really, that to me starts really kind of blowing this out, where the need for this skilled position is so critically important, because your traditional project management, your traditional business analysis environments will break down because they won't understand the full organizational capabilities. So
That's it.
it will not work.
Yeah.
All right, so let's kind of look at this again a little bit. Let's talk about budgets. You're a budget guy. You like numbers. So what are companies actually spending? So when you're digging into this, what are they actually spending on AI projects today, and where is some of the money going?
No, great question, right?
And you
So,
better have training at the end of it.
no, that's a great question, David, right? So if you were to trust the industry resources that are available, whether it's the Gartners or the McKinsey studies that are widely available, you will realize that since 2023, most enterprises per initiative are spending anywhere from $3 to $7 million
Okay.
per initiative. Most large organizations have anyway a portfolio of somewhere between 8 to 10 initiatives in
And the thing you
parallel.
want to make sure that people hear is that you're not talking about Meta trying to build another large language
Oh
model
no,
for data. You're talking about Bank of America saying, "Hey, we got to start doing some AI stuff." That's what
absolutely,
you're talking about. Enterprise
absolutely.
utilization.
Enterprise utilization, because I think that's where what I would like for people to start thinking about, especially the role of a TPM, right?
Yeah,
The
exactly.
large tech organizations, they've been utilizing this role, and they're in. I don't want to say a level of maturity already, but there is a higher degree of maturity in the role. It's
Yeah,
the the adopters of this technology that are now leaning on this role of a TPM as opposed to a traditional IT project manager or an agile scrum master, they're the ones who are really trying to figure out, how do I protect my investment? I mean, think about it, right? When you go
Yeah.
about purchasing a new house for $1 million, you go out and buy in an insurance. Most large tech organizations today and most large adopters of this technology are really looking at this as, who do I train in my teams? What kind of roles need training? And a lot of what it is all about is, it comes down to, do you understand the fundamentals of building technology solutions? Do you understand how to write code? Do you necessarily need to know how to write code? No. Do you need to write code? No. But do you understand how the sausage is made? Do you
Yep.
understand what are objects? Do you understand what are classes? Do you understand what are methods? Those types of things are allowing people, allowing organizations to make sure, hey, are we setting our people up for success by training those individuals in technical program management, prompt engineering, fine tuning of LLMs? Those types of capabilities is what a lot of the organizations are trying to make sure they're setting people up for success towards. Now you're spending that kind of money, you're obviously looking for, hey, what are the different use cases that we are seeing in the
You
industry?
got
So
to
what
have
are
value return. You got to have return on
absolutely,
value. I mean, it's not.
absolutely,
And we know there's two elements of return on value: either internal productivity, which means less employees, or it is creating a service that people can buy from you, which is
fabulous.
creating a new product or capability.
Fabulous, right? And you're a sales guy in the past life. You realize it's internal versus external.
Yep.
Can I drive something that's of internal value, or can I drive something that is of extrinsic value?
Yep.
Right? So we're looking at use cases in organizations around simple summarization. Think the legal tech industry or the legal industry. They're looking for case summaries. They're looking for similar cases with the healthcare industry, right? So you have summarization. You have
Yeah.
customer service
They're always
triage.
looking for precedent. It's precedent analysis, right? Get
Exactly.
rid of the first year lawyers and just let an AI find the precedent.
Yes. Now, here's the piece that's very important for a TPM to be aware of when we talk budget. A lot of teams, when they start thinking about this, they start looking at it as, okay, now I don't need as many engineers. But guess what? That cost is now being consumed by API calls for one of these LLM providers that you have now baked
Oh
into
yeah,
it.
people are forgetting the token cost. You're going back to the whole client server IBM world, right? IBM made a crap ton of money
Killing,
selling servers
killing.
onto their big mainframes. Guess what? That world's coming back again. You're going to have to pay for token use.
That's right, right? And a lot of folks don't realize it. We just had this use case, David, about a month and a half ago. We had a client, energy sector. We get on a call. They're like, hey, we just got a bill from our cloud service provider for, ready for this? $484,000 for 1 month. $484,000.
Whoever their provider must have had a nuclear reactor trying to keep it powered because, man, they were burning some serious tokens.
Insane amount of token usage. Insane amount of token usage. Right?
Wow. Someone was doing something pretty powerful,
Crazy.
trying to create the Mona Lisa or something.
Insane.
I think if people are listening now, they got to understand this. People are not understanding that's not just $20 a month.
No.
Especially when you're using it in an agentics way, when you're using it in more of a high-powered RAG way. Great example. That was a great example.
You got to start thinking, as soon as you have given this technology autonomy as part of your agentic process, and you don't govern it to a degree where it is also looking at exactly, right? The prices just hike up, and then you're left with a bill at the end of the month, right?
That's right.
So that TPM element is extremely important, extremely important.
And we really don't know the true cost yet because of the energy consumption issues. And we can spend a whole other. I do think that TPMs are going to have to understand some of the basics of energy utilization of their provider.
Absolutely.
So that's something else we'll talk through. We got probably time for one more question, and then we have a couple of questions from Jennifer that we want to hit on. So, the last question I want to ask you is, if I'm an IT project manager right now, here I am. I'm this IT project manager. I'm listening to this, and there is a ton. Project management is going to continue to grow. TPM is just an element of project management, right? In some ways, a much bigger element of it. PMI estimates like 80 million people, and by 2030 will have some type of project responsibility. But I'm hearing this. I'm like, yeah, man, I can see the writings on the wall. What do I have to do? How do I pivot? How do I start looking at becoming both a TPM, and then how do I become an AI empowered TPM?
No, that's great, David. And I think first, I love the role of a project manager. I've served as one myself for a long time, so I totally feel it. And there's a big need for that upskillment moving forward because here's the reality, right? Like we all started with the PMIs, project management fundamentals, the PMBOK, the Iron Triangle. Great. We then transitioned more into the world of Scrum and Agile. But you got to keep in mind these are methodologies, these are frameworks. They're not necessarily a technology tool about how to build software. They're a process framework, right? So we are looking at it this from the perspective of, hey, how do I go about upskilling? My recommendation generally is gotta learn a little bit more about the fundamentals of software development. The more you understand those elements, the more you understand sharding versus partitioning, the more you understand resilience versus fault tolerance, the more you understand object-oriented programming, the more fundamentally equipped you are to be able to get a lot more success in initiatives that you're running as a technical program manager.
Mhm.
How do you go about getting started? I'll tell you this, right? Like as part of the institute, our fundamental class is a 2 day workshop. We run it over 3 days. We have the next one coming up next week. If you haven't checked us out, check it out. The links on the page on the screen right now. Check us out. Shout out to David. Send a note to David if you're interested. The next workshop runs from Monday through Wednesday from noon Eastern to 5 Eastern. Send a note out to David, see if he can get you into that workshop. That's one. Second, I would highly recommend is once you have the fundamental knowledge, start upskilling yourselves on the concepts of generative AI. Start playing with some of the tools that are out there. Look at the new workshop that we are setting out. It should be out within the next 2 weeks on our website. That's going to be a technical program manager focused on AI initiatives. So all these things that we just talked about, what is traditional machine learning, what is RAG AI, what is agentic AI, we're going to look at all of these. We're going to go hands-on, play around with a lot of these so that
And
folks
what
can
can you
get
do? What can you build?
exact.
How do you create value with these things? And personally, that's why I see companies struggle right now. They can come up with a policy, but then everybody's staring at each other trying to figure out use cases. There's a
Absolutely.
desperate need, and although the use cases are everywhere, Ethan Malik would say use AI for everything. So I also think someone mentioned it being difficult. We're going to handle this question, but I don't think it's as difficult as it sounds. And I think it really said it goes back to the foundation, like you were saying, right? You got to go back and look at coding again. How does coding work? How do people write code? How do they compile code? How do they, how does that then become an operating situation or software in an environment? You need to understand that. You won't have to do it, but you have to understand it. And if you understand that basis, a lot of these things build up and you dig into that in that 2 day class, correct?
Absolutely. 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 And that's the most important thing, right? It goes back to the fundamentals. Being able to look at a requirement. And the classic example that we always talk about is, hey, if someone comes to you and says, hey, build me a simple CRM tool, how long would it take?
Yep.
The effort estimate, right? That's the classic case that most project managers are faced with, because here's the reality of working in any large organization or small organization for that matter. You go to a stakeholder, the stakeholder is going to come out to you and say, I have this brand new vision. Tell me how much it's going to cost and tell me when will I get the outcome that I'm looking for. And most PMs are unfortunately not educated enough in that ability to be able to say, you've asked me to build a CRM. Let me ask you these 8 questions that will help me reduce the ambiguity in my ability to estimate. And
Yep.
then I'll give you an estimate right there. Most PMs traditionally are looking at this from the perspective of, I need the full scope defined before I can go about doing this. And
Yeah.
then in the
And
agile
they're
world,
expecting
we come
somebody
out.
else to do that. In a lot of cases, they're expecting the sponsor to do it. And there's, as things get more and more not even complicated, just the capabilities increase so exponentially that you can't expect the sponsor with a product manager to know exactly what can be done. You have, when you look at TPM, in a lot of cases, it's part business analysis, it's part product management, it's part project management, and these are the, powerful things about it. For sure.
Absolutely.
Now, Laura, there was a question. Can you pop one of those questions up as a big question? I saw, or at least a comment, and why she's. What was your technical background? So Jennifer's asking that question of you, Omer. That's a great question.
Yeah, so I've been fortunate. I came from an engineering background, so I did do programming. And but I will say this, Jennifer, That is not a must-have from my experience. I've seen some extremely smart and competent technical program managers across both large tech and non-tech organizations. It's those that have realized and understood how to actually work and how to realize what it takes to build applications and systems. Not necessarily those that are able to roll up their sleeves and say, all right, engineer one, Sally, step aside, I'm going to write a subroutine. That's not the intention. So having an engineering background certainly helps, but it is by no means, from my experience, a mandatory prerequisite for you to be a successful TPM.
This is an interesting question, Omer. This will be the last one we take. And from my perspective here, I can see a TPM becoming like the technology product manager. So you might segment them into different systems, right?
Absolutely.
Or different technology stacks that they are the ones that are helping drive everything that's spinning around that technology track, both supporting the sponsors so they understand where they could be going, and then driving those coding people, which can end up being a large language model or low code environment. Don't you think? Is that where your head's at?
100%, 100%. And the second thing I'll tell you all is we have this concept at the Institute of something called domain-oriented TPMs. Because whoever asked this question rightfully pointed out, as a TPM, you can't know everything in technology. If I am a cybersecurity expert, I can talk at length about the SIS tools that are available, the SaaS tools that are available, the kind of threat actor modeling that I need to be able to do for my cybersecurity implementations. But at that time, I'm probably not the best person to talk about scalability of a mobile application because I'm not a domain specific TPM for mobility.
Yeah.
Right. So what we see a lot is in the industry, there is a big need for TPMs who have depth in specific domains, cybersecurity being one, infrastructure being another one, AI and data analytics being a major one that's hot right now. Right. So that's kind of where a couple of years back, blockchain was there, but that kind of has been put on hold or on the back burner right now. But what we're seeing a lot in this space is domain-oriented TPMs. But again, it has to start with the fundamentals of software development and application delivery. So you got to start there.
All right. Well, I think we've gone a little above our time, which is great, though, because we had some great comments and questions. Omer, I really appreciate it. I call you Omer from a professional standpoint, but really appreciate your time. Check out the Institute, and I'll be checking my email to see who's got a free course or two for next week. Excellent. Thank you. Have a great one.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.